Hello, welcome back to my English classes, and thank you for your subscription and the comments and your likes because I have been motivated by it. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, at whatever time you are watching this video. Now, today we are going to see the explanation of chapter The Happy Prince of Class Ninth Moments. Now, here I will tell you the themes, summary, significant stages in the story, characters, and so on. So, now I'll start with the explanation. Now, first, we will see the theme. The story's theme is selfless love. That means beyond anything. It is the highest virtue when one helps others even while suffering oneself. Even we are in problem, but we try to help others. This is selfless love. The happy prince, a statue, wished to help the poor starving people in the city. He first gave away the ruby from the hilt in his sword, then both his eyes of sapphire, and finally the gold leaves covering his body. Now you see, being a statue, he has given his parts of his statue to help the poor people. This is selfless love. As a result, he became blind and began to look dull and grey. अगर आप तैयार होते हैं और आपका वो मेकअप और आपका अच्छा सा ड्रेस हटा के पुराना सा ड्रेस बना दिया जाए, मेकअप उतार दिया जाए, हैं बाल उलझ उलझ कर दिए जाए, तो आप कैसे लगोगे? खराब लगोगे. तो इन द सेम वे द स्टैचू वॉज ऑल्सो देयर. The swallow, who had been obeying all his commands, had intended to fly to Egypt, a warm place. But now that the prince had turned blind, he decided to stay with him even in the cold, snowy winter. जैसे कहते हैं ना, बुरे समय पे कौन हमारे साथ होता है वही हमारा अपना होता है. तो हियर जो उसका वॉरियर था, जो उसके साथ बाद में जब वो ब्लाइंड हो गया है, वो मतलब इनकम्प्लीट हो गया, तब वो उसने डिसाइड किया कि पूरे टाइम वो उसके साथ रहेगा. सो स्ट्रॉन्ग वॉज देयर बॉन्ड ऑफ लव दैट व्हेन द स्वॉलो फेल डेड एट हिज फीट द प्रिंसेस हार्ट ब्रोक. मतलब जब वो मरा, जब स्वॉलो फेल इन टू हिज फीट्स, द हार्ट ऑफ द प्रिंस वॉज ब्रोकन. जब कोई हमारा अपना जो बहुत हमसे क्लोज होता है, जब वो हमसे दूर चला जाता है तो हम दुखी हो जाते हैं, परेशान हो जाते हैं. द टाउन्स पीपल पुल डाउन द स्टैचू एंड थ्रो द ब्रोकन हार्ट ऑन अ लीप ऑफ रबिश. But God's angels choose the dead swallow and the broken heart as the two most precious things in the city. जैसे कभी कभी होता ना, हम चीज़ों को बुरा समझ के फेंक देते, ख़राब समझ के फेंक देते, बट कभी वक्त ऐसा आता है कि वही चीज़ हमारे काम आनी होती है, या परमेश्वर हमें यूज़ करता है जब हम बिल्कुल नकारात्मक स्थिति में आ जाते हैं. Now we will see the summary. The Happy Prince, in a poignant and touching story of the statue of a prince and a little swallow that gives up its life to be with the prince. It is a story of kindness, friendship, and selfless loyalty. Means this story describes about the selfless love of others. The statue of the prince was erected on a tall column. Means बहुत हाइट पे उसकी स्टैचू थी. The prince was glided with thin leaves of gold. उसका शो करा किससे, क्या पतली पतली पत्तियों जैसी गोल्ड से उसकी बॉडी को कवर किया. He had sapphires of her eyes and a ruby on his sword hilt. मतलब तीन चीज़ें उसके, इसकी बॉडी को कवर करने के लिए गोल्ड लीव्स यूज़ करी गई, उसकी आइज़ को शार्प करने के लिए उसके सैपायर्स यूज़ किए गए, और रूबी उसके स्वॉर्ड में लगाई गई. One day a swallow alighted near his feet. He was on his way to Egypt to escape the cold winter. When the king was fully flourished in his dress, in his eyes, in his sword, so the warrior used to go for warmness to Egypt during the winter time. All his friends had already gone to Egypt. As the swallow settled down to sleep, tears drops fell on him. While the swallow was sleeping, a drop of tears fell on him. He saw that the eyes of the prince statue were filled with tears. He saw that the statue of the prince was crying. When the swallow asked him why he wept, the statue replied that when he was alive, he lived in a palace and knew nothing of sorrow. उससे क्या बोला, किंग प्रिंस ने क्या बोला कि जब मैं जीवित था, जब मैं वहाँ पे था, मैं पैलेस के अंदर था, तो मेरे पैलेस में रह के तो उसको किसी भी सॉरोनेस का उसको कोई अंदेशा भी नहीं था. बट when he died, when he was in the open area, he was watching the negativity in the town, so he was feeling sorry for it. He was very always happy and was called the happy prince. Now that he was dead, his statue had been placed on the tall column from where he could see the ugliness and mystery of his city. वो पूरी, अब वो मरने के बाद जहाँ उसकी स्टैचू स्टैब्लिश की, वहाँ से वो पूरी सिटी की देख रहा था, वहाँ की कमज़ोरियाँ देख रहा था, वहाँ की मजबूरियाँ देख रहा था. Although his heart was made of lead, he felt for suffering the people and wept. उसने जब ये चीज़ें देखी तो उसको बुरा लगा, उसको दुख हुआ, and he started crying. The happy prince told the bird that far away he could see a poor seamstress embroidering a dress for a rich lady while her child lay sick and hungry. मतलब उसने एक चीज़ क्या देखी कि दूर जगह पे एक आदमी ड्रेस बना रहा है जबकि उसका खुद का बच्चा बहुत बीमार और भूखा था, बट वो सब छोड़ के वो ड्रेस बनाने में लगा था. Asking for an orange. His child was asking for an orange who was hungry and sick. He told the swallow to pick out the ruby from his sword hilt and take it to the seamstress. तो प्रिंस ने क्या कहा कि टेक द रूबी फ्रॉम द स्वॉर्ड एंड गिव टू दैट पर्सन. द swallow wanted to go to Egypt, but the prince looked so sad that he agreed to stay that night and deliver the ruby to the poor woman. Okay, as the swallow was going to Egypt, but he cancelled his program after seeing the tears in the eyes of the prince, so he decided to be there with the prince that night, and he took the ruby and gave it to the lady. The next day the swallow saw all the monuments in the city, and when evening fell, he came to the prince before flying to Egypt. The prince begged him to stay one more night. He said that far away he could see a young playwright in a garret. He had to finish a play but was faint with hunger and too cold to write. The prince was full of pity for the man and asked the swallow to pluck out one of his eyes that were made of rare sepals and take it to the poor playwright. Now you see here, after the death of the prince, now he is watching everything and he is feeling bad from inside, and though he is dead, even then he is trying to help those poor people. The swallow did so, and the playwright was filled with new hope and energy. On the third day, the swallow spent that time at the harbour watching the sailors. When he came to say goodbye to the prince asked him to stay one more day. He said that he could see a poor little girl who had dropped her matchsticks in the gutter. He said that her father would beat her if she did not bring home some money. The prince asked the swallow to pluck out his remaining eye and give it to the little girl. The swallow did what the prince said. Now the third point, what happened? He saw the little girl who dropped her matchsticks in the gutter, and if she will not give it to his father, he will beat him. So to protect that girl from the beating of his father, the prince said to the swallow to give the other eye to that girl to help him. Now the prince was blind. The swallow decided that he would not leave for the Egypt but stay with him always. Now here, see the honesty of the swallow, that when he saw that the prince was blind, he decided to stay back with him always. The next day the swallow sat on the prince's shoulder and told him stories of what he had seen in strange lands. The prince had then asked the swallow to fly over the city and tell him what he saw. Now here, to know the condition of the city, the prince said to the swallow to go around the city and watch what is going on in the city. The swallow flew over the city and saw how the rich were enjoying themselves while the poor suffered. When he told the prince what he had seen, the prince asked him to remove his gold leaves one by one and give them to the poor. Now see, after telling everything by swallow to the prince, the condition of the city, now gradually he was plucking those gold leaves from his body and he was helping the poor. Winter came, and with it came the snow and frost. The poor little swallow grew colder and colder, but he did not leave the prince whom he loved so well. मतलब ठंडा होने के बावजूद भी, जबकि वो हमेशा ठंडे में इजिप्ट चला जाता था, बट आफ्टर सीइंग द किंग द प्रिंस पोजीशन, he refused to go to Egypt and stayed there with him. At last he knew that his end was near. Means Swallow felt that now he is going to die because of cold. He kissed the prince and fell down dead at his feet. At that very moment, the leaden heart of the prince statue snapped into two. Two snapped into two means his heart was broken into two parts. And here we can see the bondness of love between the swallow and the prince, and also the prince and the poor people. We can see the bondness of those. Next morning when the mayor saw the statue, he noted how shabby it looked. Shabby means खराब दिख रही थी, क्योंकि उसके सारे gold leaves, eyes, sword से वो रूबी सब निकल गया था, तो एकदम दिखने में खराब लग रही थी. The statue was no longer golden, the eyes were gone, and the ruby seemed to have fallen off the sword. He saw the dead bird at the prince's feet and was annoyed by the sight. The swallow is a bird, not a person. That is why he said to fly over the city and see the condition of the city. The statue of the prince was pulled down and melted into friends. When the workmen in the foundry found that the leaden heart of the statue did not melt, they threw it away in the dust heap where the dead swallow was also lying. Now here in the end we see that when the statue was given to melt it and frame it, another thing, whatever they want to, they saw that the heart was not melting. So those people have thrown that heart in the dust where the bird swallow was also lying. Okay? Now who are the main characters? The happy prince is the main character, the swallow, the bird, and the mayors. The mayor of the city is a heartless and unfeeling person because they have not felt the heart of the prince. He was neither any idea nor does he care about how the poor people in the city were living. The mayor was so hard-hearted. As he walks in the city square and with his councillors, he looks up at the statue of the happy prince and remarks its shabby look. The comments that the ruby has fallen from the sword and the eye no longer have shapers, the prince was no longer golden and looked like a beggar. Now see, after the eyes have gone, after the golden leaves have gone, after the ruby has gone, according to the mayors, the statue was of no use. Then he sees the dead swallow at the prince's feet and is so annoyed that he ordered the proclamation to be issued that the birds would not be allowed to die in the city. The mayors were so hard-hearted that now, after seeing that the bird was died in the feet of the prince statue, they ordered that no bird should be dead there. Now we will see the significant stages of the story. The swallow stops to rest on the statue of Happy Prince. Okay, the swallow on his way to Egypt for a winter to catch up with his friends. On the way, he stopped to rest at the feet of the statue of the Happy Prince. उड़ के थक गया था, इसलिए बीच में रुक गया था. Now second point, the Happy Prince weeps. When he weeps, when he saw that the city people were poor enough and the rich were enjoying themselves and the poor were suffering. The happy prince asked the swallow to help the poor woman. How he helped the poor woman? By giving the ruby to the lady. The happy prince asked the swallow to help others. The girl, he gave one eye to that. Then the swallow is unable to survive with bitter cold. Next point is this, that the bird was unable to survive in the bitter cold and she died on the feet of the statue of the prince. And when she was dead, the statue's lead heart broke into two. जैसी वो चिड़िया मरती है जो उसके साथ थी, जो स्टैचू का हार्ट था वो दो पार्ट्स में हो जाता. The man notices the dull statue. The third next point is that the man saw that the statue was dull. Why? Because the statue has given everything of it to the poor people, to help the poor people. That dead swallow and the laden heart reach paradise. Paradise means to God. Okay? God asked one of his angels to bring him to the most precious things in the city. That means the two precious things were the heart of the prince and the swallow. So these two people were not liked in the world, but they were liked by God, and God called them both. On being given the dead swallow and the laden heart, he decrees the swallow that the swallow will sing forever in his garden of paradise, and the prince will sing his praise forever in his city of gold. God rewards them both for their selfless love and deeds. Now, from this lesson, what we learn? We learn that we should not be hard hearted. We should not be cruel to anyone. If we are able to help others, we should help others. I hope you have understood the chapter. Thank you.